Hello, everybody, and welcome to our session on securing your practice against cyber threats. My name is Brian Honan, and I'm CEO of BH Consulting. We are an independent uh, consulting firm specializing in the areas of cybersecurity and data protection and privacy. So I'm going to talk to you today about how you can go about securing your practice against cyber threats. And just before we go into that presentation, I think when I last visited my own dentist, I did say to him that there are very similar parallels between my profession and your profession. Uh, Both of us, we want people to follow good hygiene and sensible practices to ensure they don't have any problems. So you, you as dentists want people to floss and brush their teeth and get regular checkups so they don't have any problems with their teeth. As a cybersecurity professional, I want people to follow good cybersecurity hygiene so they don't end up having any particular problems. We also don't particularly like having to do the emergency recoveries and rescue attempts because that can be stressful both for ourselves and for the clients, and ultimately it can actually cost our clients more money. So both our professions, I suppose, are in the practice of prevention. So I think that there are some similarities there, which I do have to smile at times. And I think it is no big secret that IT is embedded in our lives. It controls a vast majority of our lives, not just from our social lives with social media, and we're relying on that a lot more with the pandemic, etc. We're having to do these Zoom sessions, we're having to have Zoom meetings, even from professional lives and in our personal lives. Our lights, electricity, air traffic, everything else is also controlled by computers. And even in your practice, times are changing. We see where how you process payments for clients, it's done digitally. You're scheduling the computer to use for creating appointments, etc. You may have CCTV cameras, etc. in your practice. That's also there. Within your case rooms, there may be more technology in play that's controlled by various types of computers. And I won't pretend to know any of these devices you're talking about here. That's your expertise. But I'm sure if you look around your office, look around your case rooms, your surgeries, you will see more and more reliance on IT and computers. And that reliance and etc. It makes our lives easier. It makes the experience for your clients much easier. You can provide more services. You can process information quicker. Lots and lots of advantages. But unfortunately, with those advantages, from time to time, we can also have some threats and risks, and that's what we've talked about today has to happen. And you can see people often say, well, I'm just a dentist or a small practice, why would somebody want to attack me? And we can see that criminals don't care what your industry is or what your office is, that they will look to attack you. And we can see here from the US, 400 dental offices got hit by what's called a ransomware attack, and that's where a computer virus infects your computers and it encrypts all your data so that you can't access it, and the criminals will demand a payment from you to get your information back. We also seen that in the UK, the British Dental Association, they got hacked, and the bank account numbers and correspondence with the British Dental Association for its members was accessed illegally by criminals. I think as in all aspects of life, this gentleman saying, George Santayana, who famously said, those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it, is quite apt when it comes to cybersecurity. And I think hopefully, my hope is that at the end of this talk today, you would see that there are very basic steps you can take to take significant protections in your practice. And you don't need to worry about the hyped up super ninja type attackers that we see in the media. It's stuff that's happened over and over again. If we can prevent those attacks, we can protect us from the majority type of attacks out there. Sorry about that, if that's done. And here's a good report. This is from Verizon. They're a US telecommunications data center and IT consulting company. They have many other services as well. But they have a team who respond and identify to computer breaches. But what they've done is, over the past number of years, is they have partnered with the likes of the FBI, the US Secret Service, Europol, Interpol, police services all over the world, computer emergency response teams all over the world, cybersecurity consulting firms, including VH Consulting, from everywhere around the world, antivirus companies, the big names you're probably familiar with, the Symantec's, the McAfee's, the Sophos, the Trend Micros, etc. We've all provided our data on cybersecurity breaches that we've investigated to Verizon in an anonymous format. They have taken that information and they've analyzed it and shown where they see the majority of breaches and reasons occurring. There's quite a lot of detail in that report, but I think these two statistics coming out of it are quite interesting. You can see in the left-hand side, 45% of breaches featured hacking, so that's breaking into your websites, etc. And 22% include social attacks. That's actually attacks that target the people in your organization to give up information. On the right-hand side, you can see the majority of those attacks are down to the use of brute force or use of stolen credentials. Basically, what that means in plain English is the use of getting people's passwords. So criminals have phished or fooled people into giving them their passwords, or people are using passwords across many different systems, using the same password across many different systems. So one of those systems gets hacked, the criminals can use that same password for all the other systems as well. So hopefully at the end of this talk, you'll see the importance of steps you can take to minimize those risks. From an Irish perspective, the Central Statistics Office shows that in 2019, nearly 18% of all Irish companies had a ICT-related security incident. So that's 1 in 5 Irish companies had a security breach back in 2018, 2019. It's a significant number. If you think about that's how many vendors you have supplying you. Potentially 1/5 of those vendors have had a cybersecurity breach. And this is from iResearch. It's it's the Irish Report and Information Security Service. It's a not-for-profit computer emergency response team in Ireland. They provide their services for free to the Irish internet community. And they recorded in 2019 50,000 cybersecurity incidents against Irish businesses. Vast majority of those were against websites where companies have set up a website, they've gone to a web hosting company or a web development company, or their nephew or niece who's a second year in computers in college to do their website for them, but they don't look after the website. And over time, security bugs get introduced or are discovered in the software that has been used in that website. Criminals abuse those weaknesses to host their own malicious software to infect computers who visit that site, or to host phishing websites to attack other people as well. So it's important that we keep our websites up to date and secure so they're not used against other people. And when we look at all that information and we look at all the attacks, the vast majority of attacks are down to poor passwords. I have bad news for you folks. If you've got password as your password, that is not a secure password. And even if you've got password 1 with an exclamation mark, that is not a secure password either. Criminals will use those. So we need to make sure we're using strong passwords. Missing patches. So patches that are not, patches are updates from the software companies like Microsoft or Apple or Google, etc., to fix problems in the software that they have. These patches are applied to close out those issues. Vulnerability using web platforms. Your website, your practice website, when was the last time that was reviewed to make sure it was up to date with the latest software and that there was no vulnerabilities in it? Of the computers in your surgery, how many of those are up to date? How many of you are still running Windows XP or maybe even Windows 2007? These are all out of date and no longer supported by Microsoft. And we'll get no security updates for those platforms. How many of you got up-to-date antivirus software? So again, when we do investigations of breaches, we find that it's out-of-date antivirus software that has happened. And then the last one there is lack of monitoring. This is where you have all the locks and everything else in your premises, but you have no alarm system to alert you when somebody tries to break in through a window or break in through a door. And similarly, in the cybersecurity world, people have antivirus software installed, they have firewalls installed, but they don't have any way of monitoring those to alert them if there was any particular attempts to break in. So they're the key areas where we see of weaknesses. And with regards to cyber threat landscape, what do we see happening against Irish business and in particular against dentistry and dental surgeries and etc. over the next 12 to 18 months? Well, to be quite frank, I don't see us seeing anything majorly different because criminals will use the same threats they use over and over again because they work. And we see this reinforced by Europol in the Internet Organized Crime Threat Assessment. They say ransomware or business email compromise. So I mentioned ransomware earlier on, which is the software, the virus that encrypts your data. Business email compromise is where an attacker will pretend to be from a vendor and send you in an email that looks like it's from one of your suppliers with an invoice attached to it, but with new banking details in it. You pay that invoice, the new banking details, to find out later on that the invoice never came from your, was never a genuine invoice from your vendor, and that the banking details in that invoice did not belong to your vendor, but was under control of the criminals. So they're the two biggest attacks we see at the moment: ransomware and business email compromise. Another variation of business email compromise is somebody pretending to be the CEO or somebody senior in your office, sending an email pretending to be from that person to your accounts payable, saying pay this invoice or transfer this money to this bank account immediately because it's urgent. They come up with some story to make it sound plausible, but please don't contact me for the next day. I'm either at a meeting or unavailable, and make sure it gets done. And we have seen many attacks based on these. And criminals will continue to use these attacks because they work. They're quite simple to defend against, but they are actually quite successful. The World Economic Forum for 2020 said cyber attacks are in the top 10 attacks in terms of likelihood and indeed of impact. I think interesting, you can see there that infectious diseases was only at the top 10 of impact, but I think for 2021 it'd be right up there at number one, both in terms of likelihood and in terms of impact as well. And speaking of that, like the coronavirus has impacted us from a cybersecurity point of view. Criminals are using the coronavirus as a means to send more emails, phishing emails with lures such as flight refunds, updates from government, updates from tax office, updates from delivery companies, and we're ordering so much more online that people will actually think it's genuine. So it is important to make sure that you are aware that which emails are genuine and which ones are not. And we've seen with the lockdown, with people working remotely, people may be working from devices that aren't as secure as work devices. They may be using personal devices. So criminals are taking advantage of that. And it's important to try and make sure staff are kept aware of it all. And with them working remotely, they're under more stress. Staff, as I said, are probably most susceptible to falling for fake emails from criminals pretending to be flight refunds or updates for governments, or an update from you saying, you know, here's an attachment regards to the wage subsidy scheme or the PUP or whatever it may be. So making sure staff have the confidence to push back and and question whether the email is genuinely from you is quite important in enabling your staff to be and your team to be helping you protect your systems. The CEO fraud talked about earlier on, that is becoming more and more prevalent. As I said, it's where criminals will pretend to be somebody seen in the organization looking to extract, to fool that people in the accounts payable department to pay an invoice rather quickly. And you know, lots of companies have fallen for it, and it's a major issue. We also see business email compromise happening, where criminals either hack into the email systems of a vendor and then send emails out with fake invoice attached with fake banking details to get people to pay to those bank accounts which are under the criminal's control. Or they set up a fake email. So the email address, it might be, instead of being bhconsulting.ie, which is my company's email address, it might be bhconsulting.in. So at a quick glance, Brian.Honan at bhconsulting.in looks very similar to Brian.Honan at bhconsulting.ie. Person may be under pressure, may be busy, and quite quickly may not take the time to check the email address is correct, and can then proceed to process the invoice as per normal and pay it. So it's important that you put in the right processes to ensure that staff do question things and have a way to verify is the invoice genuine, either by phone call or other ways, to contact details they know are true for the vendor or true for the person in question. So CEO fraud is happening and will continue to happen. Ransomware, as I said, will continue to happen. Criminals are becoming more adept at this, and they are looking now to attack more. They actually have a case in Finland that's ongoing at the moment, where attackers have hacked into a psychotherapy company, a psychotherapy practice, sorry, and they have ransomed all the data in that practice, are demanding the practice pay them money so they can give them the password to recover their data. But at the same time, they're also going to the patients and saying, if you don't pay us a ransom, we will release your personal detail, the details of your sessions with your psychotherapist online. So we can see criminals don't have any scruples here, folks. And I hopefully a key thing you get away from today's talk as well is that criminals aren't the fluffy, happy teenager that we've been led to believe from all the movies that's what a hacker is. Hackers are actually hardened criminals, and they're out there looking to make lots of money, and they are unscrupulous and will take whatever steps necessary to do that, including embarrassing patients or ransoming hospitals, etc. So they have no scruples. Just because you're a dental practice, just because you have patients to look after, they don't care. They will attack you if they can, and they will ransom your data and hold it to ransom. So it is important to take the appropriate steps to prevent that from happening. And I would recommend strongly not to pay them the ransom. You pay the ransom to criminals, all you're doing is you're funding crime. You're giving them money to improve it. And there are statistics out there to show that companies who pay ransomware extortion fees actually end up paying more to recover their data overall than companies who don't. So the best way to protect your information from ransomware is keep your software updated, have good up-to-date antivirus software installed, and have good robust backup as well, because if they hit your systems and encrypt them, at the very least you can recover from a good backup and your backup will run again. Criminals will continue to target people. They will target your staff. They may even target your patients to see if there's any way for them to try and get information from them for passwords, for data, for information they can use to continue on their attack. So it's important to make sure that your own staff, you've got them trained and vigilant as to spot fraudulent emails not to give details over the phone to people just because they say it, to be very wary, etc. And I know this can be more challenging in lockdown and remote working, but it is important that we enable people to be able to do this. Criminals will target the humans, as our modern operating systems are becoming more and more secure, and it's harder for criminals to break into them. It's easy for them to try and get somebody's password. So it's important to make sure people are using strong passwords. It's important to, where you can, to enable what we call multi-factor authentication, which is setting two-step authentication up on systems. We will see criminals now move their attacks to cloud systems. So if you're using a cloud-based environment for email, for your CRM, for managing your patient data, this is where criminals will start to focus their attacks, because they can see, you know, they hit one company, they can get many victims or much more information there, and it's more likely to pay. That example I gave earlier on of the US company where 400 dental practices were impacted by ransomware, that was a cloud-based dental appointmency provider. So they have a cloud-based solution that allows you to create manage appointments, and the criminals hit that provider, ransomed all their data, and by ransoming that one company, the impact of 400 practices. So you can imagine the pressure that one company is under. So it's important to make sure you do good due diligence on any providers you're working with, to make sure they have the right security in place, the data that you're entrusting to them. And this is where we come to supply chain attacks. This is where criminals will look to maybe attack your vendors so they can attack you, either for business email compromise, invoice redirection attacks, or the other ways that you've given data to these suppliers. Criminals may attack them to get that information. So do follow good steps to try and make sure that they are those vendors and suppliers are secure as they can be with the data you entrust. So how do you, as a medical professional, defend against these types of attacks? So I'm going to give you some top tips. Hopefully nothing that's going to be overly burdensome, because these are as I said at the top of the talk, the basic steps, the basic hygiene you can follow. You follow the basic hygiene, you're going to prevent the majority of attacks. It's not saying, as in your profession, there's going to be unusual attacks or something that's going to bypass these, but it will protect you against the majority and hopefully keep you safe online. So the first thing I would recommend you do is determine what information is it that is important to your practice. Where is that information held? Is it your patient data? And if so, where is that information held? Is it on one computer in your surgery? Is it on a laptop? Have you got many computers? Is it spread across different computers? Is it in the cloud? Is it on thumb drives? Is it on people's phones? Where is that information? And once you identify where that information is, then try and figure out what are the risks to that information. So if that information is on a laptop, you know, if you've got confidential client information on a laptop, what are the risks to that information? Well, firstly, the laptop could be stolen. If that laptop is stolen, that information could be accessible to the criminal that stole that laptop. Or if you lose that laptop, anybody who picks that laptop up could potentially get the information. So is that laptop password protected? Is it encrypted? These are ways to reduce the risk. Or you could avoid the risk and simply take the information off the laptop and put it on a more secure computer in your office. It's there. Or another way to deal with risk is transfer it. Saying, okay, look, maybe we need to use a cloud provider because they will have a lot more time and resources to protect your data. Nobody is 100% secure, including cloud data providers, but they may be able to provide better security than you could with your own resources. So when you look at the risks, see what way, you know, are there any steps to avoid doing that risk? is there any ways to reduce the risk? So maybe encrypting the laptop, putting password protection on it, etc., or transferring the risk, transferring the data somewhere where it's more secure. I recommend you establish policies as well. These don't have to be onerous, big details, but there are policies to say to staff and to yourself, this is how we will do things here. This is what we will do. In order for you to access this information, this is what has to happen. This is how our passwords should be. Systems should have antivirus software. This is how they should be kept secure. This is how we handle that data. And once staff have those policies in place, then they know the rules that are there to follow and the consequences of not following those rules. People often say to me, Brian, if I had some money to spend on cybersecurity, what is the best place I could spend that money? And I always say it's in security awareness training. It's education people within your practice as to what it is, what steps they can take to secure the data in their care. So what can they do to make sure they're selecting secure passwords? What can they do to ensure the devices they have that is storing sensitive data is secure and encrypted? So all these awareness training is very important. How can they spot fake emails that could be looking to extract sensitive data from them, such as their passwords to your online systems? Awareness training is key. Backup, backup, and backup. Back up your data as much as you can, ideally to an off-site scenario, so that if anything happens to your primary devices, your servers, your computers, at least you have that information secure. Should you get a victim of ransomware, at least you could have a backup to recover from. It's important though to test your backups regularly to make sure they do work. I worked on a case with a client once where they did get hit by ransomware. I suggested they go and recover from the backup, and it says, well, Brian, yeah, we have been backing up every day for the past 14 months, but nobody bothered to check the backup to discover they're only backing up one file. Not every file, just one file. And that one file wasn't much good to them as a firm. They needed all their files back. So make sure you're backing up everything and regularly test the backups. And it's not just to protect you against ransomware, it can protect you against a major issue with your hardware, being the hard disk fails, the motherboard fails, the computer fails, or even, God forbid, a bigger disaster such as a fire or other natural disasters. Keep your software patched and up to date. As I said, software over time gets old, new bugs are discovered. There are people out there are constantly testing software to see can they discover bugs, and when they do, those bugs could be a way, or those weaknesses could be a way for criminals to break into your system. What the major companies do, such as Microsoft, Apple, IBM, Google, Oracle, etc., they issue software updates. They do that regularly. Microsoft does it the first Tuesday of every month. So make sure you apply those patches and that those patches are kept up to date. Keep your antivirus software up to date. So that's antivirus software, given the times they're in it, are kind of like a vaccine. So if you keep your systems up to date with good antivirus software that's regularly updated, it's across all devices, and even those of you who are using Apple Macintoshes, I would say to you, viruses do impact Apple computers, so make sure you've got antivirus software installed on them as well. This is not just a problem with Windows, it can also be a problem with Apple machines as well. So keep your antivirus software up to date. Monitor and respond. Have a way to monitor your security system. So if your backups fails, that at least you get an email to say the backup has failed so you can run it successfully, or that you get an email from your systems to say your software is out of date, or an alert in some way to say software is out of date, or that your antivirus software is out of date, or that somebody has been trying to hack into your systems. Many of the computer systems you use will have security logging in it, and that can alert you when something's happening. So I would talk to your IT provider and see is there anything they can do to help you monitor for those things. And I would suggest information sharing, using the Irish Dental Association as a platform that you can share amongst each other's good and bad experiences when it comes to cybersecurity. What is something that you found to work for your practice? Might be something another professional might find useful for their practice to keep them secure. Or an issue that you've had, the lessons you've learned from that could be lessons that other people could apply to their practice to keep their data and their patient data secure. It's very similar to your neighborhood watch. Just 2 weeks ago, one of our neighbors, one of my neighbors, had bicycles stolen from their garden. They'd left their side gate open. The criminals walked into their back garden, took the bicycles and walked back out again. So of course, when everybody in the neighborhood heard this, we all started closing our side gates to make sure the criminals wouldn't have that opportunity. So it's simple things like that that can make us more secure. There should be no shame in sharing information that you've had a cybersecurity breach, because at the end of the day, you're a victim of a crime. Same way if you've been mugged or somebody broke into your practice, you're a victim of a crime. So there's no shame in that. And sharing your information can help others not become victims as well. I would recommend you do regular assessments of the security of your solutions to make sure that they're up to date and you're following the latest good practice to keep data and your system secure. Regular assessments can help you on that. So here are some of the questions some of you asked. So how do current practice management and filing systems compare in terms of security? Is the cloud system safer than local hosting or vice versa? Very good question. So I will hold my hand up and say I'm not familiar with dental practice management and filing systems, so I can't answer the first part of your question, really, I'm afraid. We need to spend some time looking at those systems, seeing how they are secure. The next question is quite good, relevant. Is cloud system safer than local hosting? Well, yes, a cloud system can be much safer, but don't forget, the onus is on you. The responsibility is on you to make sure that cloud provider, that cloud service provider is following good practice. So do make sure you question them about how they keep data secure, what steps they have in place to keep your data secure. Just because in the cloud doesn't necessarily mean it's any more secure than on your systems, but cloud providers do have more staff and more resources to apply to keeping their systems secure than maybe you might have on a local basis. In general, I would say yes, the cloud system is probably more secure, but the onus is on you to make sure you check and ask them various questions on what steps they're taking to keep your data secure. And there are quite a lot of questionnaires out there that you can Google for, that you can send on to these individuals, or you could engage with somebody like your IT provider, or indeed ourselves, BH Consulting, to help you select a security provider. So what can be considered the main security threat to a practice? Local data breaches by accident or through social engineering and hacking, or global breaches by leaks in hosted systems. To me, I think the greatest threat that you have to your practice is local, either by accident or mainly primarily through social engineering. And where I see majority of breaches happening, whether that's in the medical field or in other areas, is where people have had their passwords to their system compromised. And that happens in several ways. One way is people use the same password across different systems. So the password they use for their local GAA club or the local newsletter, or to log into some other system, is the same password they use to log into your practice's email platform. So if that other local system becomes hacked, criminals will look and see what other systems are out there and will reuse those passwords to see can they get access to other systems. And that's one way that can happen. So I'd encourage people not to use the same password across different platforms, different systems. Or the other way is that the passwords get phished or socially engineered. And primarily how that can happen is an email could come into an individual pretending to be from their email provider, their IT provider, or somewhere else with a link in it, ask them to go to a website which looks genuine, and they put in their user ID and their password. Criminals get that password, and then that allows the criminals to log in. So I was trying to recommend two things here, because both of these issues, when it comes to security, I think passwords is key to everything, if you pardon the pun. And we saw that from the Verizon report as well. Well over 80% of incidents were down to compromised credentials. So tips, I would say, don't use the same password across different systems. I would use a passphrase rather than a password. So a passphrase could be lines from a song, lines from a movie, or a poem, or catchphrases, or something like that that is easy for you to remember. And you know, you can use different catchphrases, different passphrase for different platforms. And also use a password manager. So password manager is a secure method for you to store your passwords in. There are many tools out there, such as LastPass, 1Password, Keep It Safe, and several others that you can store your passwords in securely, and then use those safes to recover, because you can end up with lots of different passwords, different systems, and a password safe is a great way to manage all those. Which specifications do digital products have to fulfill to be compliant to current law and guidelines? There are two laws that I'm aware of right now. One is GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, and as dental practitioners, you are obliged under GDPR to make sure you've taken all appropriate steps to make sure that the information entrusted to you by your patients remains protected. So that's not necessarily a specification, but under GDPR, there are several things you have to ensure. One is that any new systems that you purchase or put in place, you have to do what's called a data privacy impact assessment to make sure that the security around that is appropriate, and that you won't be impacting on the rights of the individuals involved. You also have to make sure privacy by design is built in from the very, very beginning, and privacy by default is turned on in those systems. So there are key things on the GDPR that you need to be aware. The other thing on the GDPR is to make sure that any personal data you're storing is stored within the geographical region of the EU or the EEA, the European Economic Area, or with approved third countries by the EU. If you store data anywhere else, you could be in breach of GDPR. The other regulation I'm aware of is the EU Cybersecurity Act. This is introducing the a certification scheme that software products have to adhere to be secure. It's not fully in place yet. It may be coming in place over the coming 12 to 24 months, where these certification schemes will become real. So it's not in place yet, but it's coming. But the main one I would say at the moment is GDPR, which you should be concerned about. What is the best practice to inform patients on data processing and security? Well, one of the easiest and best ways to do it is that if you've got a website, you put your privacy notice, you have a page dedicated on your website outlining your privacy policy and how you what steps you've in place to secure and keep your data, your patient data secure. Also, new patients coming in, when they're signing up, whether that's digitally or physically on a piece of paper, that they're given a one-pager or a booklet outlining to them how you're protecting their data. Should you have a security breach, well then I would suggest that depends is the answer there. It maybe by email, maybe by other means, depending on the number of patients you have to contact and what contact details you have for them. So hopefully it's an issue you never have to worry about from a breach point of view, but I would say from a transparency point of view, informing patients on what steps you're taking to protect their data should at least be on your website, and you should have a document in your reception area, maybe a poster or a leaflet or one pager outlining what you should have in place. We have lots of other information available to you as well if you want some help on securing your practice. We have 5 papers which are free to download, and we don't even ask for your email, so feel free to go to our website, bhconsulting.ie, white papers, where you can download various white papers in plain to read English on how to secure your practice. We also have what we call our security assurance checklist. It covers 3 key areas, which is people, serious questions there that you can answer to see are you following best practice. Same with your processes, and then with technology as well. So you could download that one pager to check and see, have you got the correct things in place from a security point of view. There are other ways to keep yourself secure as well. Cyber Essentials, this is a standard aimed at small businesses to make sure they've got the cybersecurity essentials there, hence the name, to keep data secure. There is a more robust ISO 27001, which is more robust and a step up from Cyber Essentials. The ENISA, the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, also provides a top 10 cyber hygiene tips for SMEs during COVID-19, and as does the Data Protection Commissioner. They provide a guide on protecting personal data when working remote. Our own National Cybersecurity Centre in the Department of Communications has a free guide as well on 12 steps of cybersecurity. So they're all areas that resources that are available freely to you that you could look at and then engage with your IT provider or your IT person to ensure that you have the right steps in place. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions or would like to see how we can help you on that as well, and maybe in particular how we can help you with Cyber Essentials. We've included a leaflet on Cyber Essentials with this talk in case you want more details on it. But there's information about our website and about BH Consulting. So I'd like to thank you for your time, for listening to me today. I do sincerely hope you found it useful. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you.